I never thought I'd be the guy standing in the middle of a crowded cafeteria, watching the girl of my dreams realize that I'd just systematically destroyed her entire future. But here we are. Imagine spending 4 months being the invisible backbone of someone's academic life, pouring your literal blood, sweat, and tears into essays and lab reports for a girl who wouldn't even acknowledge your existence if there wasn't a deadline approaching, only to find out she's been laughing about your crush to the entire football team behind your back. I didn't just stop doing her work. I made sure that every single assignment she submitted for the final month was a ticking time bomb of academic sabotage that would go off the moment the professor hit grade. Was I wrong for taking it that far? Or would you have let her walk across that graduation stage on the back of your hard work while she treated you like absolute trash? I need you to really listen to how this started before you judge me, because by the end of this, you might realize that some people deserve exactly what's coming to them. It all started on the first day of senior year in AP Physics, a class that most people in our school avoided like the plague, except for the overachievers and apparently Chloe. Chloe was the head cheerleader, the girl whose face was on every school poster, and the person everyone, including me, secretly or openly obsessed over. I was just the guy in the back row with the thick glasses and the 4.0 GPA, who spent his weekends coding or reading theory. When the teacher announced we had to pick lab partners for the entire semester, my heart nearly stopped when Chloe walked straight past the jocks and sat down in the empty seat next to me. She flashed this dazzling, perfect smile and whispered that she'd heard I was a genius and that we'd make a great team. At the time, I was so blinded by the attention that I didn't see the predator eyeing her prey. Within a week, the partnership shifted. It started small. Hey, I'm so confused by this one equation. Could you just finish this page for me? And quickly spiraled into her dropping her entire binder on my desk every Friday with a pouty lip, telling me she had a big game or a practice and just couldn't find the time. For 2 months, I was her ghostwriter. I was staying up until 3 a.m. doing my own work, and then doing hers, making sure to slightly change the writing style, so the teachers wouldn't get suspicious. I was essentially earning 2 diplomas at once. I justified it by telling myself she actually liked me. She'd text me, "You're a lifesaver," with heart emojis, and occasionally she'd sit with me in the library for 10 minutes, giving me just enough hope to keep the engine running. I was the classic nerd trope, falling for the bare minimum of human decency, because I was lonely. But the mask slipped during the week of the homecoming dance. I had finally built up the courage to ask her if she wanted to grab a coffee. Not even as a date, just as friends, and she laughed. Not a mean laugh, but a dismissive, "Oh, you're serious?" kind of laugh. She told me she was busy with the homecoming king, but that I should definitely get that history paper done by Sunday, because she really needed an A. That hurt, but the real breaking point came 2 days later. I was in the library, tucked away in the back stacks where I usually work, when I heard familiar voices. It was Chloe and her friends, including her boyfriend, the quarterback. They didn't see me. I heard my name mentioned, followed by an explosion of laughter. Chloe was literally showing them the texts I'd sent her, mocking how pathetic and obsessed I was. She told them, and I'll never forget this, "He's basically my personal assistant. I don't even have to open a book this semester because he's so desperate for me to like him." It's honestly sad how easy it is to manipulate guys like that. The quarterback joked about how they should give me a thank you card after Chloe gets her scholarship, and they all walked away laughing. I sat there in the dark, feeling the heat rise in my chest. All the hours I'd spent making sure her work was perfect, all the sleep I'd lost, and all the genuine care I had for her. It was all just a joke to her. She wasn't just using me. She was proud of it. That was the moment the helpful nerd died and the architect of her downfall was born. I realized that if I just stopped doing her work, she'd get a few zeros and maybe a C. That wasn't enough. I wanted her to feel the weight of her own entitlement. I decided I would keep doing her work for the rest of the semester, but I would change my strategy. For the next 4 weeks, I turned in assignments for her that looked perfect on the surface. They were formatted correctly, used high-level vocabulary, and looked like A+ material. However, I started weaving in poison pills. In her history essays, I'd cite sources that didn't exist or include subtle, incredibly offensive arguments hidden in the middle of long paragraphs that I knew she would never read. In physics, I used the correct formulas but purposefully messed up the basic math at the very end so every single answer was wrong, despite the work looking complex. I was building a house of cards for her, and I was waiting for the final exams to blow it all down. To make things even more convincing, I started acting even more devoted. I would bring her favorite lattes to our lab sessions, watching her smirk at her friends when I wasn't looking. I even offered to help her with her college entrance essays. This was where I really laid the groundwork. I knew which colleges she was applying to, the prestigious ones that only take the top tier of students. For her personal statement, I helped her write something that sounded beautiful but contained subtle red flags about her character, disguised as growth moments. I was effectively ensuring that even if she somehow passed her high school classes, the admissions officers would see a version of her that was toxic. Every time she patted my shoulder or gave me that fake sugary, "Thanks, you're such a doll," I felt a surge of cold adrenaline. She thought she was playing me, but I was the one directing the entire play. I watched her spend her afternoons at cheer practice or out at parties, completely oblivious to the fact that her entire academic persona was a fabrication I was currently dismantling piece by piece. She even had the nerve to ask me to proofread her boyfriend's English paper. I did, and I made sure to fill it with thesaurus vomit. Words used so incorrectly that he looked like he had used a faulty translation bot. They were so confident in my submissiveness that they didn't even check the work. They just hit submit, and went back to making fun of me. The tension in my chest was constant, a mix of fear that I'd get caught and the intoxicating thrill of the long game. I had to be careful. One slip-up, one teacher questioning the sudden shift in her tone, and the whole thing would collapse on me. But I knew these teachers. They were overworked and saw what they wanted to see. A star student maintaining her grades. Chloe was the school's golden girl, and I was the reliable ghost. It was the perfect cover. I remember one specific night, about 2 weeks before finals, she called me crying. Not because she was stressed about school, but because she'd had a fight with her boyfriend. She talked to me for an hour, using me as an emotional dumping ground. I sat there, listening to her complain about how no one understands her. All while I was literally editing a physics lab report for her that I had filled with impossible data. I realized then that she didn't even see me as a person with feelings. I was just a utility, like a smartphone or a laptop. That phone call solidified my resolve. Any lingering guilt I had about ruining her scholarship vanished into thin air. I started documenting everything. I kept a secret folder on my cloud drive with every single text she sent me demanding work, every email where I sent her the completed assignments, and even recordings of her laughing at me from across the library when she thought I was too busy typing her papers to notice. I was building a case that wouldn't just fail her. It would prove she had been coercing another student to do her work for an entire semester. I also started making friends with some of the students she had bullied in the past. I didn't tell them my plan, but I listened to their stories. One girl had lost her spot on the yearbook committee because Chloe wanted it for her aesthetic. Another guy had his car keyed after he refused to let Chloe's boyfriend skip the lunch line. Hearing these stories made me realize that Chloe wasn't just a mean girl. She was a parasite. She fed off the hard work and kindness of others and left nothing but wreckage behind. I felt like I was doing the school a favor. I was the dark knight of the library, and my weapon was a MacBook Air and a very high level of spite. The week before the final project was due, Chloe invited me to a party at her house. For a split second, I thought maybe she was trying to be genuine. But then I saw the entry fee. She told me I could come if I finished her entire semester-end portfolio by the time the party started, so she could celebrate stress-free. I didn't go to the party. Instead, I stayed home and crafted the ultimate masterpiece of academic sabotage. I included a section in her portfolio about collaboration, where I specifically listed myself as the primary author of every single piece of work she'd turned in since September. I hid it in the metadata of the files, knowing the IT-savvy teachers would find it if they ever looked. I was tired, my eyes were burning, and my social life was non-existent, but the thought of Monday morning kept me fueled. I was like a chemist mixing a volatile compound, and I was just waiting for the spark. So that is the situation I found myself in. I was no longer a victim, I was a saboteur. I had spent months being her doormat, and now I was the one holding all the power over her GPA, her scholarship, and her reputation. I had spent every waking hour for the last month meticulously crafting her academic suicide note, and she was about to sign it with a smile. Before I tell you how the final confrontation went down, and how I watched her world crumble in front of the entire school, I want you to pause right now and go to the comments. Tell me, would you have just stopped helping her and walked away? Or would you have gone for the full-scale revenge like I did? Was I being too petty? Or did she earn every bit of this? I'm curious to see where you guys stand before I reveal the ending. The final week of the semester arrived, and the stakes couldn't have been higher. Chloe needed a near-perfect score on her final project, a massive 40% of the grade research paper, to keep her eligibility for the state cheerleading competition and her college scholarship. She handed it to me with a, "You better not let me down, babe," and a wink that made my skin crawl. I spent the entire weekend polishing it. But instead of a research paper on the Industrial Revolution, I wrote a brilliantly structured, perfectly cited paper that, if you read the first letter of every paragraph, spelled out, "I am a cheater who uses people." Furthermore, I deliberately plagiarized huge chunks of it from a very well-known, easily searchable academic blog. I knew our school used high-end plagiarism detection software. I turned it in through her portal on Sunday night. I didn't stop there, though. I knew the teachers often shared notes on suspicious students. I sent an anonymous tip to the administration suggesting they look closely at the sudden improvement in Chloe's writing style over the semester. I provided a few leaked screenshots of our conversations, the ones where she was demanding I finish her work, but I cropped them to make it look like I was a concerned student she was bullying into doing her work. It was a masterclass in manipulation, mirroring exactly what she had done to me. I spent that Sunday night unable to sleep, the weight of what I had done finally sinking in. I wasn't just failing her. I was potentially ending her academic career. But then I remembered her laughter in the library. I remembered the way she looked at me like I was a bug under her shoe. The guilt was replaced by a cold, hard sense of justice. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, thinking about how my life would change after tomorrow. I would no longer be the guy who does Chloe's homework. I would be the guy who stood up to her. Monday morning was the fallout. I was sitting in the cafeteria when the announcement came over the PA system for Chloe to report to the principal's office immediately. The room went silent. Everyone knew what that specific tone of voice meant. 10 minutes later she walked out, her face pale, looking like she'd seen a ghost. Her eyes were red, and she was shaking. She ran straight to me, screaming in front of everyone, asking what I had done. She shouted that the teacher had flagged her paper for 90% plagiarism, and that the hidden message I'd tucked away had been seen by the dean. She tried to slap me, but I caught her wrist. I just sat there, took a slow sip of my water, and looked her dead in the eyes. I told her, "I didn't do anything, Chloe. I just gave you exactly what you gave me. A total lack of respect and a whole lot of fake effort. You wanted an A? You should have earned it." The jocks tried to step in, led by her boyfriend, but when I pulled out my laptop and pointed out that I had 4 months of text messages proving she had been forcing me to do her work, which is a violation of the school's academic integrity policy, they backed off real quick. I told them that if they touched me, I'd send the full transcripts of her mocking them to the entire school. I had specific messages where she called her own boyfriend a brainless meathead who can't even spell cat, without help. The look on his face when I said that was worth every late night I'd ever worked. He looked at Chloe, then at me, and then walked away without saying a word. The silence in that cafeteria was the loudest thing I've ever heard. Chloe was sobbing now, realizing that her pathetic nerd had been the one holding the leash the entire time. The principal walked out and told her she needed to leave the premises. The Golden Girl was escorted out by security while the entire school watched. But the story didn't end there. 2 days later, I was called into an academic honor council hearing. Chloe's parents had hired a high-priced lawyer and were trying to sue the school and claim I had harassed and framed their daughter. They wanted my 4.0 GPA stripped and my own scholarships revoked. I walked into that room with nothing but my laptop and a calm expression. Chloe sat there in a designer suit, looking like she was auditioning for a role as a tragic heroine. Her lawyer talked for 30 minutes about bullying and cyber-sabotage. When it was my turn, I didn't argue. I just opened my cloud folder and projected the logs onto the big screen. I showed the counsel the timestamps of when she had messaged me, usually while she was at a party or a game, and the timestamps of when the files were created on my computer. I showed them the original drafts and the final poisoned versions. Most importantly, I showed them the messages where she explicitly threatened to have her boyfriend beat the nerd out of me if I didn't finish her chemistry lab. The room went dead quiet. The principal looked at Chloe's parents and said, "I think we're done here." The aftermath was glorious and devastating. Chloe was stripped of her head cheerleader title. She was suspended for the remainder of the year, and because of the academic dishonesty mark on her record, her top-tier college scholarship was pulled instantly. The college she had bragged about attending sent her a formal rejection letter within 48 hours of the school's report. She had to scramble to get into a community college in a different town just to escape the shame. Her boyfriend broke up with her a week later, mostly because he was afraid his own grades would be investigated if he stayed associated with her. I later heard she tried to start a lifestyle blog, but it was flooded with comments about her cheating, and she had to delete it within a week. She had become a social pariah, a ghost of the girl who once ruled the hallways. Meanwhile, I was invited to give the valedictorian speech. Standing on that stage, looking at the empty seat where Chloe should have been, I felt a strange sense of peace. My parents were in the front row, beaming with pride, totally unaware of the war I'd been fighting. She tried to play the victim on social media for a while, telling everyone I was a stalker who sabotaged her, but nobody believed her. The evidence was too clear. I had the logs, I had the drafts, and I had the satisfaction of knowing she'd never use anyone like that again. I realized that the nerd stereotype is only true if you let people walk over you. If you have the brains to do their work, you have the brains to outmaneuver them. It turns out, when you rely on someone else to build your future, you give them the power to tear it down too. I learned that my time and my brain are valuable, and I'm never letting anyone treat me like a tool again. I've spent the last year focused on my own goals, and let me tell you, life is much better when you aren't carrying someone else's weight. I'm heading off to my dream university in the fall, and for the first time in my life, I'm not worried about who's sitting next to me in class. I hope this story serves as a warning to anyone who thinks they can climb to the top by stepping on the people they deem beneath them. People notice, and eventually, the bill comes due. You might think you're the one in control, but you never know who is actually pulling the strings. Knowledge is power, but knowing how to use that knowledge against people who underestimate you is even more powerful. If you think Chloe got exactly what she deserved for her arrogance, and for treating another human being like a disposable resource, make sure you hit that like button right now. It really helps the channel out, and lets me know you enjoy these justice-filled stories. If you've ever dealt with a user like this in your own life, or if you think I went a step too far, I want to hear about it. Share your final thoughts on this whole mess in the comments section below, and let's talk about it. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next time someone gets the ultimate revenge. I'll see you all in the next story.